continuing the series of interviews of senior experienced pipers and drummers in society for their history and their comments and their education, if you like, of the students out there. And today is Monday the 16th of August 2010, and we're at the fag end of the World's Week. Everybody is rather exhausted emotionally in every other ways with the World's, but here we have today a double header of Brett Tidswell and Bruce Gandy following another interview, so look forward to him. We're going to opposite ends of the globe. Brett is from Australia and Bruce is from Canada. Brett is a principal of piping, and we'll hear what that entails in Australia. He's also a successful pipe major, an instructor, a very good indeed soloist, and more importantly again, he has done a whale of research into bagpiping in all its aspects, and has brought out a book on the subject, the Complete Piper's Handbook. Now, enough of my introduction. You don't want to hear from me, you want to hear from Brett, so we'll kick off with Brett. Right, Brett, can you tell me, we've got a wee bit of ground to cover, but I think it's essential that we go back chronologically, if you like. Where did it all start? What age? Who taught you? What were your early influences in bagpiping, assumably in Australia? Is that where it began? Yeah.
Absolutely. I started playing at the age of 10. My uncle Michael Clark was from Aberdeen. He started me in the very early stages. I moved into a band training program that was being run at the Adelaide University Regiment. They had like a cadet type program that was run by the pipe major Ernest Dowler, who came from Wick, and he was a great influence during the early stages of my playing, and even later. I later worked with him teaching at a school, Scotch College Adelaide, where Ernie was involved in teaching the junior school, and I was involved in middle and senior school. So, you know, during my entire playing life, he's had quite an involvement, really. In the mid-80s, it would have been, I guess, I started seeing Donald Bain on a regular basis.
He was very famous in Scotland as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
When did Donald move out to Australia? Any idea?
No, Donald never moved to Australia. He was a New Zealander. So Donald came over to. Yes, Donald came out to Scotland and spent considerable time with Donald MacLeod, and then after that, he spent time with Bob Brown. Donald won the gold medal at Inverness in 1979, I think. And it would have been early 80s that I would have been seeing him, because it wasn't long after he'd won his gold medal.
So he was quite current then with everything.
Absolutely. Donald used to come to Australia a number of times every year to Adelaide, where he had friends. And I'd see him whenever he came across, and then I would go and spend a period of weeks staying with him at Temuka in New Zealand, where he was living at the time. So I saw Donald for maybe a period of probably 15 years, I guess.
Mm-hmm. That's a long time, eh? Yeah. And which direction did your piping take principally initially? Was it solo piping you were interested in, or was it band piping, or was it both?
No, it was both, really. You don't get the situation in Australia where you have a large number of pure solo pipers. Most players are band orientated and play solo piping. There's just, you know, Australia is so widespread. There's not the ability to compete with a large number of players on a regular basis. Okay. So if you're going to be competing on a regular basis, you've got to be doing bands and solos and whatever else. So no, principally I would have been competing in solo contests from 11 or 12 years of age. But, you know, that would be included with the training program to come up and play with the band. So I think I would have been competing with the band from maybe 13 or 14 years of age. And we won our first Australian Championship when I was 15.
So what band was that?
That was with the University Regiment. So we won...
What city was that?
That was in Adelaide.
Yeah, so it's all your band experience with Adelaide, really, that centre?
Primarily, Adelaide's a funny place in that we've always had a small group of very experienced people, and there's always been one very good band in Adelaide, and I've won, I think, 4 or 5 Australian Championships with Adelaide bands.
Who's the pipe major?
At the time we won the first championship, it was Peter Hewlett, who has a book of tunes out and won some of the bigger composing contests around.
Okay.
So Peter would have been the first pipe major that we won a championship under. Ernest Dowler was pipe major before him, and then after that we moved. We had a problem with the military system, and they prevented the band from competing. We moved to the Royal Caledonian Society, and in that band we won a second Australian Championship under Brian Erskine, who was one of the players who'd moved to Adelaide from Auckland and District in New Zealand, which was a top grade 1 band. They'd come across to Scotland under Bill Robertson, who was pipe major of the Royal Scots. So Brian was pipe major at that stage, and we won a championship with them. And then following that, the band virtually collapsed at one point in time. I'd gone off on my own and was teaching through a school and had a large number of pupils. I got approached by the drum corps that had come from that band and asked to start an independent band. Bands had always had problems with the organisation they were a part of.
Yeah.
So we started a band that wasn't linked to anybody, called City of Adelaide Pipe Band. So
I see you're wearing the T-shirt there.
I am.
Yeah.
So the band started in 1991. We had a group of players who were from grade 4 bands and school bands. One other chap who played grade 1. We formed the band. Within 6 months we were graded grade 2, and we went on to win the Victorian State Championships in grade 2 within the first year of starting the band.
What sort of era would that be?
That was early 90s, so that was 91 we started the band.
Yeah,
And then we won the Australian Championships in grade 1 in 98. That was
Where was Vicky Police when all this was going on?
Vicky Police at that stage were in the process of, that was the year they won the World Championship.
Correct.
And they didn't compete in the Australian Championship that
Why
year.
not?
I think it was probably a financial thing. I think so. You know, they were. It's such a large a country.
Okay, for the uneducated, travelling from Victoria to Adelaide, what are you talking?
Well, this would have been travelling from Victoria to New South Wales, which would be talking about maybe 1,000 kilometres or something to attend the competition.
Yeah.
So it's a major distance to travel. So with the cost of travelling to the World Championships, they didn't play the Australian Championship that year. But following that, my band was the top Australian band at several Australian Championships following that. We might not have won them. Simon Fraser came over, Canterbury Callies were over, I think, in 2000. We were the top Australian band that year. We had a number of second places that came up, and then we suffered a loss of a significant number of players due to work commitments, really. Some moved overseas, some interstate. That's one of the problems we have in Adelaide. It's you know, the big money in jobs is interstate.
Yeah.
So we lost quite a large number of players. We were downgraded to grade 2 because we were down to about 8 or 9 pipers, I think. And then we won the Australian Championship in grade 2.
What about they come to Scotland with the band?
We haven't brought the
City
band over to
Band.
Scotland, I think primarily because of expense.
Yeah, it's, at last I heard, well, Victoria Police were telling me in the late 90s it's $100,000 or something.
$100,000 a trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, $100,000 to us is a mammoth task because we have no backing. So any money that we raise is raised with our own hard work.
Yeah.
So therefore, to bring a band across to Scotland is a mammoth effort for us.
Yeah.
And if we're not firing at both ends, piping and drumming, it would be a waste of a trip to us.
Yeah.
So, you know, during the years that we were doing really well, our goal was to compete in New Zealand, which we did successfully in Grade 1.
Great.
And yeah, Scotland was just too
So
far.
that was the 90s. Did that continue into this decade?
Because we've been playing in Grade 2 and been lacking in numbers for a while, we've built up a training program. So the band has about 20 learners, piping and drumming, mainly piping learners. So we're a bit of a training band at the moment. We've won the Australian Championship in Grade 2, the previous one. We won the last, we got second place at the last Australian Championship.
Okay.
So the band's still doing very well, but we're rebuilding.
Okay, so we swift change of tack here. I want to drag you back again.
Yes.
To solo piping.
Yes.
Could you tell me about your solo piping experience, prizes, who taught you what and what you competed in, Pembroke, light music, whatever, and just we'll do that subject. So where did you already mentioned you started competing when you were a young teenager.
Yes.
Developed from there.
I guess significantly, the biggest competition in Australia is the R.U. Brown Pembroke Society competition. The society, which I'm the vice president of at the moment, the society was formed following a visit to Australia of Bob Brown, and Bob passed away very shortly afterwards of thrombosis.
What year was that, Bob?
That was 1972.
72.
So the society, when Bob was over, he said that we should start a piping society to get together as pipers and play, not in the spirit of competition, but in the spirit of enjoying the music.
Purely the music aspect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the society was formed, and the society meets once a month, and we have tutorial nights one month. The following month is a recital night, and a number of the members will get up and play.
Do you have much of attendance?
We do. It varies. So, you know, some nights are very well attended, some aren't. If we run a tutorial night, traditionally we have maybe 15 players come along to it. Maybe more some nights, maybe less others. The recital nights, we have maybe 30 or 40 people come along on a regular basis. And these are just the hardcore membership.
Yeah.
However, the society runs a competition every year, which is the gold medal competition. It would be the biggest competition in the Southern Hemisphere.
Okay.
We would have, on average, between maybe 90 to 150 pipers compete in the competition.
Is that right?
Absolutely. At all levels.
It's grading, huh?
Yep, it's graded. In the gold medal, we would traditionally have maybe 25 to 30 players in the top grade. The standard is excellent because we have players like Greg Wilson, Richard Hawke, Marion Horsburgh, Stuart Easton. Those players come over from New Zealand to compete on a regular basis.
So they're getting a decent tune out of people, the audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we would have the top Australian competitors. Alistair McGuinness won the last one. He's a doctor from Grafton who I think he was getting lessons for some time from Ian Morrison, I think.
There you are.
We have...
see, this Pipers'Persuasion society you have,
yes.
I take it that's still based in Adelaide?
It is in Adelaide,
okay,
yes.
That's
yes.
right. Yeah.
So we run the competition every year. I've always competed in the competition from the mid-80s on.
Yeah.
So I think I was trying to work out last night, I think I've competed in the competition on 20 occasions. There's been a number of years that I was involved in judging the competition that I didn't compete. And there have been quite a few years where I got a second or third place or something, but I've won the gold medal on 12 occasions now.
My goodness.
Which is a record. And
Yeah.
it was a big effort in Australia to win each of the Pibroch competitions in each state, and that was a challenge that a number of players set themselves. Lachlan McCabe, I think, has won the gold medal 3 times before he passed away, and that was a huge achievement at the time. But I have the advantage of being in Adelaide, so I'm competing in the competition every year.
Yeah.
So, but I'm the first player also to win that gold medal and Pipe Major and Australian Championship there.
Excellent. Do you have set tunes in the Pibroch?
No, we have own choice, and it varies. It used to be 6 tunes of your own choice at one stage. At the moment, we're at 4 tunes of your own choice. Yeah, and we've thought about a set list, but we think that with the size of the competition, we'll keep the standard higher if we have a free choice.
A free choice.
And a free choice doesn't interfere with the players who are doing set lists in other countries. So New Zealand sometimes has a slightly different set list to Scotland. And
Yes,
so if New Zealand players are playing, if players are going through to Scotland, we're not interfering with their set list. They can try their tunes out if we keep it own choice.
And you're not enslaved by the Scottish list either.
Exactly.
So you can, you have the freedom of playing your own tunes.
Exactly.
Do you find that the same tunes are getting copied? Are you still getting a wide choice of tunes getting played?
It's a very wide choice of tunes, and I think there's enough dedication and pride from the upper level players that they're not submitting the same tunes over and over again. So, you know, if I win a medal playing a specific tune, I don't want to turn up and play the same tune the next year and the year following and the year after, because people are going to get very sick of hearing it.
The quality of the instruments getting played?
Generally very good. You know, the standard's very high. You know, if there's people who are winning over here playing, then we have to make sure it's high. Yuri Chisholm played a few years ago. He got second in the gold medal.
Okay.
That was the last one that I
So
won.
the standards are high.
So it's a very high standard.
There's good knowledge there and good instruments. So that's excellent. I've only covered the Pibroch here. What's happened to the light music over there?
No, the light music's quite strong as well. When we run this competition, it's not just Pibroch, we run light music as well. So we have a number of grades A, B, C and D and novice, and so you know there's the same level of players competing in light music.
Did you achieve the same level of success with your light music and solo?
I think we call the top light music event at the RU Brown is the Hamish Mackenzie Trophy.
Yeah.
Hamish was a piper that moved to Adelaide following the Second World War. And Hamish, his father was Donald Ian Mackenzie. He won the gold medal at Inverness in, I think, 1910 and Oban in 1936, I think. Hamish had won the junior Pibroch and was at Inverness and was a full-time pupil of John MacDonald of Inverness, as was his father.
Okay.
So Hamish moved across. He'd been in the Scots Guards during the Second World War. My understanding was that his father wanted him to run their hotel, which was in Tongue, so that he could compete, and Hamish had other ideas, so he moved to Adelaide. So Hamish was a very big influence on Pibroch to the players in Adelaide, and our senior players now, a lot of them are pupils of Hamish's. So the trophy for light music is his. I think I've won that on 10 occasions.
So it's pretty successful. Pipe band wise, a pipe major, and the solo piping wise, you've achieved a lot over there. Did you ever compete in Scotland?
Not very much. I've been over a couple of times, but I've never taken it seriously. Whenever I've been across in Scotland, I've had other things that I've wanted to do primarily for various reasons. The first thing is that when I first came across to Scotland, I had lessons with Donald Morrison for a while.
Yes.
And my primary reason for being here at that stage was to do my exams.
Okay.
So I came across and did the Institute of Piping exams on that occasion.
Yeah.
Other times that I've been across, I've either had college matters to attend to, which has taken up my time, and I really haven't wanted to focus on my own playing at that stage. Or, like this trip, playing with Strathclyde Police Band, I've wanted to concentrate on the band things. It's not fair on the band for me to come across and be concentrating on other things. It's been a busy year, and to fit in and do the right thing by the band has been my primary goal.
So it says a lot for you. Just a brief sentence. Did you get the music and the tapes and all the rest of it and learn that way, and then just go across, parachute into the band? Or?
I did. I don't know about tapes, but I certainly had the music sent across and parachuted in and had my first band practice 3 hours after 32 hours of travelling.
Oh my
goodness. I dread to think what it sounded like.
Yeah, it was fine. Did great. Thanks very much from Strathclyde Police, I'm quite sure. You mentioned one word there, a trigger, college.
Yes.
The Australian Pipe Band Association and all the rest of it. So, and I noticed principle of piping.
Yes.
So, could you tell me what's this college in Australia? It'll be different from other colleges. Tell me about the principle of piping. And is that associated with the Australian Pipe Band Association? What's all the connections here?
The college is the educational wing of the Australian Pipe Band Association.
Is that the full name of the college?
It's the Australian Pipe Band College.
Okay.
And the Australian Pipe Band Association, which is primarily the same type of organisation as the RSPBA, has a music board, if you would like.
Okay.
The college encompasses piping, drumming, ensemble, dress and drill, and admin, rules and administration.
Okay.
The principal of piping is an elected position. After my band won the Australian Championships, I was elected into the position of principal of piping.
Which you've held for many years?
Which I've held since 1998.
Okay. Are you voted in annually or?
Yes, you're voted in by the board. So the board encompasses the presidents of each state. Because each state is a separate branch of the Pipe Band Association. The board meets and as part of their national meeting, they vote for the national principals. So the way the college is structured is that every state has a vice principal, and I'd held the vice principal state in South Australia for some time. The board then elected me as the principal of piping, so I manage all the piping issues throughout Australia through the vice principals in each state. The two music principals, principal of piping and drumming, we manage ensemble. So between us, we handle all the ensemble matters that come up. So the role basically involves the training and certification of adjudicators, and we manage the national panel of adjudicators. So each state has their own state panel of adjudicators. The national panel is a series of adjudicators nominated by the principals who have to meet specific requirements, and we manage that national panel as well as training or getting involved in the training and certification of the state panel adjudicators. Now that's for me, that's for both piping and ensemble. We do all of the certification and syllabus for the training of pipers nationally. So all of the certificate courses that we run, the national principal sets the examinations and the syllabus and all those types of things. We then also do recommendations for any seminars, assist in presenting seminars throughout the country. So the role is basically training, education of adjudicators and pipers.
So this is a full-time role for you?
This is a part-time voluntary position which involves more time than a full-time job and very little recompense.
Oh my goodness. I'm sitting here wondering what is or was your full-time job, not professionally. What did you work at or whatever?
Look, I've spent 22 years working as a chartered loss adjuster.
Okay.
In that role, I did investigations into legal liability matters and presented them for court.
Yeah.
I couldn't manage that and everything else I was doing piping-wise, and decided in February of this year that I had had enough of a stressful, high-pressure job, and I'm now doing piping things 100% of my time.
No.
Hence the reason I'm here.
And you're bringing your analytical mind to bear on the subject. Yeah?
Quite probably.
Absolutely fantastic. I see, on my lap here, folks, I've got the Complete Piper's Handbook by Pipe Major Brett Tidswell. And after we've heard what we've heard from Brett this morning, it's no wonder I had to bring out this handbook because of all the diverse subjects that's involved. And I don't know about you folks, but I'm entirely surprised. Maybe that's very patronising. I don't mean it to sound like that, but I'm uneducated in the ways of Australian piping, and it's been a revelation. How organised, supremely organised it is. It's absolutely fantastic. And in your book here, Brett, you've got you start off with a practice chanter, and you work your way through how to build the bagpipe, how to set it up, and blowing, thorny subject. Blowing an instrument, you know, even a sentence in that, please, because it's supremely important from the beginner's point of view, from the competitor's point of view, the solo pipers, and even more so, it's the bane of my life, listen to pipe bands that can't blow a D.
Yes.
You know, because they lay off at that particular point in the mid-register notes. What have you got to say about that?
Look, I think blowing's an interesting topic because I don't think many people actually think very hard about the actual physics behind it. Mm-hmm. Because if we blow into a blow stick, the pressure has to increase gradually. We don't blow in, and it's not a instant rise to a specific pressure and then a drop. And I think we have a misunderstanding from people at early levels who like to try and pump their bag and think that that's the way that it all works. Whereas all our arm really is doing is maintaining a constant pressure. But when we blow in with a gradual curve, and as we finish, it drops away in a gradual curve as well. And so the arm is to maintain a constant level and not to pump in a strict manner, as though the bag is going up and down, which it's not. It's gradually increasing and dropping. With my band, I always tell the band to blow through long notes. Particularly D, I mean D's a key note. D and E are notes that we should continually be listening to as we play in a band. Mm-hmm. They're key indicators as to whether you are maintaining tone. And so blowing through long notes and listening to those key notes as we play. And as you gain more experience, of course, you listen to your entire charter to see what's happening. But I think at an early stage, they're the key indicators.
Talking about notes, why do pipers never pay any attention to a low G when they're setting up a bagpipe?
Because low G is the hardest note to tune. I think because it's lower down in the register and it doesn't sound as obvious against your drones as some of the other notes, I think low G therefore gets overlooked quite often. But if you're a P-rock player, you can't afford to overlook low G because you have so many tunes with long sustained low Gs in it that it's a very important note for us.
It was quite peculiar. I remember the Victoria Police, the year before they won the Worlds, they more or less kicked herself down to second or third place that particular previous year because the low Gs were well out. And also, another pipe band this year I heard playing at Dumbarton in first grade, the low Gs were absolutely wild. And much to the consolation of somebody that I had the conversation with. But I had good backup because Ian McClellan heard it as well, you know. And you've got to how to wear a kilt in the book. Very, very important. If you don't look the part, you don't act the part. Suggestions for band practices, how to get most out of the practice. How much did you practice?
As a band?
No, as a person.
As a person. It depends what I have on, because my practice wanes every year, and there's a reason for that. I separated a shoulder some years ago, and I find now quality of practice is very important to me because I can't put in the long sustained practice that I used to as a kid. I mean, as a kid you practice all the time, and it's not so much, you know, you don't necessarily sit down and do structured practice, but you play a lot. But now I find I have to structure my practice very carefully and get the most out of it because I'm not capable of standing there and playing for the huge amounts of time that I used to.
Okay, so how do you structure it?
Well, I have a goose, and the goose is very important to me because I practice a lot of people on a goose rather than a full instrument to keep the pressure off that shoulder, which has to serve me. I can't play if I separate the shoulder again.
Okay.
I had 2 years off when I wrote the book as a result of the injury.
Right.
So I tend to baby it quite well. I do very strict practice leading up to solo competitions. I have a set exercise routine. And the first thing I will do is sit down and work on the exercise routine and build technique. Exercise routines are there to build strength and muscle memory. So I begin with exercise routines and I'll play them and then play tunes. And so I probably spend about 20 minutes on an exercise routine before I start practicing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll do that for a number of weeks. And the exercise routine comes in a number of times a year, depending on what I'm doing. Big solo contest, exercise routines start. Then I'll look at structuring my tunes the way that I want them to be played. So I'll spend some time on the practice charter looking at what type of expression that I want to get out of each tune. I will then spend time putting them up onto pipes and listening back. You have to play bagpipes. We're not practice charter specialists or goose specialists or whatever. You have to be up on bagpipes. But the way that I've got it structured, I can minimise the length of time that I spend up on a bagpipe because I'm getting older and physically it's more demanding.
Do you record your sessions?
I do record my sessions, and I think that's very important. I think it's important to go back and listen to the recordings, and you'll be surprised what's slightly different to what you think it is. And I think that's very important. I've done a lot of recording lately because I've recorded 2 CDs, and it's always interesting to go back and listen to your own playing. But the other thing that I do a lot of that I think is very important is singing P-rock.
Right.
I spend a lot of time singing Piper, and I might be going for a walk, I might be sitting in the car. I'm sure people at traffic lights probably think I'm nuts. And you're not necessarily audibly singing it, but you're singing the tunes through in your head.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important, because at the end of the day, we've got to be portraying the songs and not playing some technical mishmash.
I remember Angus McLaren saying to me once, you've actually got to play the tunes through. It's not sufficient, even the best known tunes in your head, you've still got to play them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And you've got to, there's no use playing Lament for Only Son just now and making a good job of it, and a year later expecting just to play the same tune again.
It doesn't happen.
Got to play it.
Absolutely.
You've got a very interesting chapter here on the psychology of performing. You've lost me right away.
Look, the danger with talking about the psychology of performing is that it will be seen as mumbo jumbo. And I think a little bit of background is fairly important. In the 1970s, my father was the national coach of the Australian Olympic shooting team. There's a lot of psychology that goes into performing well in a shooting competition, because it's all about relaxation. It's all about being able to shut other things out of your mind, and there are a lot of techniques that are used to do this. And he introduced some things into Australia that were not common in mainstream sports. One was autogenics. And autogenics is an area where there's a huge danger of it being seen as mumbo jumbo, because it's been called self-hypnosis and things like that, but it's basically a method of training oneself to do the right things within your own mind in competition, confidence, positive attitude, those types of things.
Yeah.
So a lot of the mainstream sports saw that as being irrelevant, especially the more physical sorts of sports saw that as being irrelevant and were treating it as mumbo jumbo when he first introduced some of this stuff into Australia. And I remember him talking to some senior football coaches about it, and they didn't take it seriously at all. He took on coaching of a church netball team just to prove that a sport that he knew nothing about, he could make a huge difference to. And it was immensely successful. And now the methods that were being used back then are commonplace in main sports, and runners, athletes, football players all use a lot of these techniques, which back then were seen as being quite unusual. Now, students, musicians, anybody can take advantage of a lot of these techniques. Some of them are quite simple.
Yes.
Some of them are quite complex. So the psychology behind performing has always been something that's been around me, and something that I've found very interesting and done quite a lot of study into. And the things in the book, I guess the thing that I need to impress is that a lot of the things in the book, there's a lot of scientific basis behind the book itself, because we've gone scientifically into all aspects of what we're talking about in the book. If I'm talking about increasing the volume of a drone read, then scientifically we've proven that the methods work using electronic equipment. And it's the same with the psychology. I mean, we've gone into this in great detail and worked out, what other sports are using, what other musicians are using. We're talking about, in the book, about methods to improve your confidence and reduce nervous anxiety in performing that doesn't involve using drugs. Talk about beta blockers and things in the book and the dangers in using those sorts of things. But in the book, the methods that are there work on a number of levels. The chapters were originally magazine articles, which were published by Piping Times and New Zealand Pipe Band magazine, and magazines like that published these articles. They've gone on and been published by societies of performing artists in all sorts of places. If you Google them on the net, you'd be amazed at where they appear. But
it's very, very relevant, really, because especially for a solo piper, you get all sorts of things going on in your head when you're up there on the platform, and get this feeling, I've only got the last part to go, it's going really well, I'm going great here, trip.
Yes.
And that's the point when because your concentration starts to wander off the tune, thinking about how well you're doing, you lose.
Exactly right.
And all these wee things I suppose you've covered there.
I have. Look, I think on a number of levels, on the simplest level, if you do your background work, you prepare yourself properly, and you present yourself properly. So you turn up well presented, in your uniform worn correctly, and you're confident that you can stand up and do a good performance because you've done all the groundwork and your instrument is well maintained.
And you visit the platform where you're playing?
Absolutely, but you do that in a number of ways. You have a look at where you're playing and you become confident and comfortable with your surroundings, and you've got a greater chance of playing well than if you turn up and you're worried about where your hat is and your jacket's torn and your pipes are falling apart, and you know they're not going to go well, and you've only half cooked the tune. Then you've got a far less chance of standing up doing a good performance in a solo competition. So they're the basics behind getting your brain sorted out to play a good performance. But then you move on to issues. So if you break down in a competition, or a number of competitors break down before you, it's very hard to stand up and do a good performance. It's very hard to stand up and do a good performance after you've broken down in a competition. And there's a number of ways of getting your brain sorted out so that you can turn up and say, well, I've had an issue. I'm now going to turn up and do a very good performance following a very poor one. Chances are, if you don't know how to do that, you're going to do a very poor performance for the second one as well.
You've obviously gone into this over the years very methodically, and I, for one, will be looking forward to reading the book and passing it on. You've got a great many pupils, haven't you?
We do a lot of teaching through the band. I'm not doing an awful lot of private tuition outside of the band at the moment, but of course I'm continuously teaching the pipers in the band. We then have a large learners program through the band, and I've been doing some teaching through Skype, but that's very minimal at the moment. But the teaching that I'm doing, I'm going to look at increasing that when I return to Australia.
Are there any other issues? I always ask this as an interviewer, I did it for years. Are there any other issues that perhaps I've not touched on this morning that you would like to advise people on given this opportunity? Well,
I think in conjunction with the book I do a website.
Okay.
And the website is immensely popular.
Okay.
It's called schoolofpiping.com. It's a free website.
Right.
And look, the way the book and the website came about was when I popped my shoulder and had 2 years off playing. I had done a large number of magazine articles, some of which went into the book. Others were sitting on the computer and I had nothing to do with them. So I thought I should use all of these and built the website. And the website has got bigger and bigger and bigger. A lot of people ask for things. Say, how do you do this? A good example is the paperclip in the bass drum. Someone says to me, on the internet, how do you put a paperclip in a bass drum and what does it do? Well, it's very simple for me to put an article and a few photographs and post it up on the internet.
Great.
Which
Pictures worth a thousand.
absolutely.
Words,
I can't explain it if I'm writing to someone. I don't know what the result is they're going to produce. It could be anything. So it's easy for me to put it up on the website, put a link to it, and people see it. And anyone can then access it. So we have a large number of articles on the website. The website also does reviews, which suppliers are telling me is very successful. The website gets, on average, between 5 to 15,000 hits a day. There's a lot of people that go on there and have a look and mull around and look at photos and historical things. But the reviews are very successful, and so with charters, there's two components. We look at the charter, measure a whole heap of things on the charter, output, the frequency of notes, the volume of the charter. So, if we're talking about what a charter actually does, there's a scientific basis to what's being said on the site. We'll try it with several different types of reads of varying style. So, we're not going to try it with half a dozen ridge cut reeds. We're going to try it with all different types and styles of reeds of varying type.
Yeah.
And so we can talk about how well the charter performs, any obvious faults with the charter, what type of result you're going to get. I don't believe in giving any product a bad review. There are a number of products that I've refused to review on the site and have returned them to the supplier with an apology saying, no, we won't put something up there because I haven't been able to get it to work satisfactorily. Mm-hmm. That doesn't necessarily mean that someone won't think it's a nice product or whatever else, but it just means that I'm not satisfied with it, so I won't put it on the site. But I'm not trying to say this charter's better than this charter or this drone read's better than that one. I'm trying to say this works, these are the faults, this is how we've overcome them, and this is the sort of result that you're going to get. Now, it's fairly obvious with some charters that they're going to give you a crisp, clear sound. Some are going to give you a warmer, fuller harmonic sound. That may change with reed types, but we can comment on that. And then generally, with each charter, in the multimedia section of the site, I give a sound file. So record a sound file, someone can go on, have a listen to them all, go, oh, that's the sort of result he got with it. I like this better than that. It's amazing how many people say, wow, I went on the site and I really love that charter, but someone else will come on and say, I didn't like that, but I really love this one. And that's personal choice. And so from overseas, it's very hard to decide what you're going to play. If I want to buy a charter, I can't walk into a shop and try it out. I've got to go and buy one.
So you need to be advised.
So there's some advice on there. So we have product reviews. We have a historical section. Yeah. There's a section called Lost and Found that has all the old recordings of John MacDonald of Inverness on there. There's some lessons with people like Donald Bain. There's some lessons with myself, Bill Robertson from New Zealand. I'm trying not to make it the Brett Tidswell show. I'm trying to make sure there's influences coming in from other people. There's photo albums, which has anybody can send me their photograph playing bagpipes, and I'll put it up in it's called Piper's Club, so you can go on and see yourself. You can see who all the notable players are in the world today. So if you want to see who Bruce Gandy is, you can go on there, and I'm very sure there's a photograph somewhere of Bruce Gandy playing bagpipes. You say, that's him. But more importantly, I found that I'd be talking to players about old pipers, and James Centre, who moved to Melbourne around the turn of the century, is one that came up quite often. You'd be saying something to somebody about John or James Centre, they wouldn't know who you're talking about. Now there's photographs up of all those people. So I don't know how many there are. There's probably 100 or 200 pipers, historical photographs of pipers that I've sourced from numerous places or people have sent me. There's old bands, photographs of Glasgow Police Band and Govan Police. Yeah. Some have come from friends, some have come from family members, whatever else. They're all over the place.
A very, very successful project.
It has been, yes.
And there you have it, folks. Google the man. And it's a complete Piper's handbook. Get out there, buy it. It's well worth buying. It's good value for money. And the website again is
schoolofpiping.com.
Okay. Tell them again.
It's schoolofpiping.com.
Yes, okay, well done.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
very much for your time today.